Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Garfield. I am one of the programmers here at Woods Hole, and today I am joined by Steve from Shoot to Marry. Thank you for joining us for this Q&A at the 29th Woods Hole Film Festival. The festival runs from now through midnight on August 1st. Before we begin, we would like to thank all of the festival supporters and sponsors. This festival is made possible by the assistance and support of many people, and we hope that we will be able to count on you going forward as we continue to develop the virtual screening platform. A couple of housekeeping items. All films are eligible to receive both an audience and jury award. You can vote for the audience awards for the feature films in the platform. On the home image of each film, you'll see 5 stars next to the box that says watch later. That's where you vote. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. I'm sure there'll be lots of 5s for Shoot to Marry. For the short films, we will send pass and ticket holders further information about how to vote. During today's Q&A, which will last about 45 minutes, I will be speaking with the filmmakers for a bit, and then we will open it up to questions from the audience. Please write your questions in the Q&A section, which is on the spacebar at the bottom. I will then pass along your questions for response. Please mute your audio, enjoy, and thank you for being with us today. So, Steve, I think you can unmute yourself now and we can start chatting. I have to say, I watched the film yesterday and I adored it. I think I have like 10 or 12 questions here that I was just, as I was watching, I was typing them out and kind of typing my thoughts as we were watching. And I think my first question / comment is I couldn't imagine bringing a camera and recording myself on dates or trying to meet people, let alone watching it back. So what was kind of the experience like, kind of taking the camera everywhere and then rewatching the events?
Well, first of all, thank you, Hannah, for saying that you enjoyed the film. I'm delighted. Um, it was a lot to juggle because I would show up and I'd have my camera and my gear, and I would be setting up my stuff while trying to establish, a rapport. And it was sort of like I was looking for love and setting audio levels at the same time. I was a one-person crew, and it was dizzying. It was, and then I'd go home after 2 or 3 hours filming with somebody and just cross my fingers that the material all worked, that everything was in focus, and that the audio levels were right. But of course, at the same time, I'm trying to connect uh, with somebody and learn from everybody, and yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah. So just correct me if I'm wrong. So you kind of filmed all these dates over the course of a year, right? Or how long was
Yes,
it exactly? Okay. And
that's
then you had the
exactly right.
5 years kind of break, and then you had the kind of conclusion, of course.
Well, yeah, so I filmed for about a year, and then I edited for about a year, and I had sort of an earlier iteration of the movie, um, that I'd finished it when I was just a few months into dating Aaron, and I wasn't thrilled with the ending. Originally, the movie sort of had an open ending, like let's see what happens next kind of thing,
Mhm.
which was fine. Um, but I left the movie for 4 or 5 years. I figure I'll get some distance from it. I mean, I thought I'd leave it for 2 months and get some distance from it, but somehow 2 months turned into 5 years, and I became scared to look at it actually because I'm very self-critical of my work, especially the more time that passed, the more convinced I became that I wasn't going to like what I saw. And but when I rewatched it years later, I didn't hate it, which for me that's good. If I to not hate my work. So
That's a good start.
yeah. So I and then I had an ending too. Um, so I gave it a new ending, and I could finally see after all of that time had passed how to sort of connect the dots and create a story out of all that material.
What? Yeah, no, I think it really came together. I really liked, I think about like 15 to 10 minutes left in the film. I was like, okay, how is this gonna end? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, and then we get Aaron coming back, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so invested towards the end, and I was really happy that it had a happy ending. I think we all as audience members and viewers, I think we all tend to, we like happy endings and we like when things work out.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
so I
funny.
guess,
There was a part of me that thought, well, maybe this is too perfect in a sense that maybe it's even cheesy to have a happy ending, but that's life. I mean, it's documentary in it. And when I set out to start filming this thing, I never thought in a million years it was going to have that sort of a happy ending, that I was actually going to meet somebody. I thought I'll film for a year with a bunch of interesting people, and by the end of the year, I'll still be single. I was convinced I was still going to be single. I also, was pretty broken when I set out to start filming this thing. My self-esteem had been pretty crushed.
mm-hmm.
So it didn't even occur to me that I was lovable, or that, that there was potential was there to fall in love again. So I thought the movie will end, I'll still be single, but perhaps from having met all of these interesting women, I'll have, maybe pieced myself back together and learned a few things along the way about relationships and women. And then that would be a fine ending. So that it actually had this happy ending was mind-blowing to me. It still is.
Mm-hmm. How long has it been, now July 28th, 2020, how long has it been since the film ended?
Oh, well, so it's been over 5 years.
Okay.
I mean, since that originally, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So I guess kind of my next question and point I wanted to kind of discuss was a little bit, what I really liked a lot was your narration, and how, it's very, sometimes it was kind of sarcastic and self-deprecating, but it was also just very frank and honest. And I thought that it really set the tone for the film. What was it, how were you writing kind of the script as you were going along, or did you all kind of edit it together and then put in the narration in the end?
The narration was the last thing that I wrote,
Mhm.
just about, 4 or 5 months ago when I was finishing the film. I wrote and recorded all the narration, but I kept a diary as I was filming, because I knew that, or at least I, hoped that I was going to be less heartbroken at a certain point, and I didn't want to forget how I felt at the outset. So when I was feeling really shitty after the bad breakup and I first started filming, every day, whether I was filming with somebody or not, I would write down my stream of consciousness thoughts.
Mhm.
And yeah, and I did that. So for the whole year I was filming, every day I was jotting down notes about how I was feeling day to day. And then I was able to rely on those notes when I wrote the narration.
I totally thought you were writing it as you go along. So it's really interesting to hear that you wrote it at the end, because I think it just feels, I don't know, it feels so realistic. So kudos to you on writing a really great script and narration for it.
It was sort of a combination of those two things. I was writing as I went, but
Mhm.
then I could only really properly write tight narration that had an emotional arc
Mhm.
at the end, because it was only with perspective and with time that I could, create great story from all of that material, and create narration that would have a beginning, middle, and end.
Had you written narration for other films beforehand,
My
in like
first,
previous films?
my first documentary, which is called Camp Hollywood, also has my narration running through it, and it's also very much a first person kind of a doc from my perspective. Not quite as personal as this doc was, but similar in style.
Great. I guess, let's see, I'm just scrolling through my notes here. I guess kind of the next thing to do is kind of discuss these interviews. I think it was interesting. You were talking about how, you were focusing on bringing in the camera and then also trying to build up a rapport. And I think you really succeeded, because I think there were some really great, honest interviews. In particular, one that really stuck out to me was your interview with Lisa, your childhood crush. So how did you kind of build up that rapport and trust with your subjects to get these really kind of frank and honest interviews out of them.
I mean, Lisa Messenger, I agree with you. She was incredible. She's exactly what you want from a documentary subject because she is just completely unfiltered. And I felt so lucky that she felt comfortable with me, and was willing to go there. And you know, I wasn't expecting that. Uh, I don't know that I did anything. I was myself. There was no, you know, pre-interview or anything like that. Um, we spoke only briefly prior to me showing up with the camera for me to explain and you know what the documentary is and what I gave Lisa and you know a sense of what type of questions I was going to ask her about relationships and stuff like that. So she had a sense of what we were going to be doing, but you know I showed up with my camera and we got started right away. And I guess she had a sense from me, as maybe did all of the people in the movie, that I am someone who is open.
Mm-hmm.
I'm unfiltered,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't always been that way, but I am now. Um, so maybe me being open gave her permission to be open, uh, or maybe she's like that with everybody. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that that you just commented and you said that, you know, you weren't always so open and unfiltered. And I think in this documentary, that's very, very like unfiltered look at your life and what you're doing and how you're going on these dates with these women and what's happening outside of it. So did the film at all kind of play a role in making yourself feel more unfiltered, or did that happen beforehand and then you made the film?
That's such a good question. I think as the during my year of filming, I did find that the more people I met and connected with, and listened to, the more comfortable I felt opening up and being vulnerable and just completely honest. Um, I mean, I suppose I've been working on that for years, but I tend to be more introverted, and um, and I also am a real like homebody. Like I you know for years I didn't really leave my apartment as much as I probably should have. So this doc really pushed me out of the apartment to go and meet people. And you know, the more people you meet and share stories with, the more, I don't know, relaxed I think you become about just opening up and being real.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, you know, you really do end up kind of going, this film really, the audience really ends up going on a journey with you. And I think I like how, you know, you're very honest in your narration, but you also aren't afraid to, you know, critique yourself. And I love when you start going back and you looking through the interviews again and you're reflecting how, you know, rewatching the interviews, you know, really start to kind of listen to what they were saying more. Which I thought that was such a great part of the film. What were some of the interviews that kind of stuck with you the most? And I mean, besides Lisa and Aaron, obviously, what were kind of the interviews that really stuck with you years later after the film?
Well, there was some very simple advice I got from a woman named Miriam. She's only appears briefly in the movie. You see her, she's in New York. She's an artist herself, a photographer, and we see her on a park bench in a New York park. And Miriam's advice to me was simple and maybe sounds obvious, but it did resonate with me. She said, just be yourself and don't try so hard. And um, that's really the best advice that anyone could give me and that I could share with anyone else who is either looking for love or just looking to connect more deeply with other people. It sounds simple, be yourself, but it can be difficult. And I think we all know that feeling on a first date, for example, of wanting to show your best self to the other person, to be the most impressive version of yourself, to charm the other person. And the thing is, if a relationship does start to pick up momentum. Eventually the person is going to figure out who you really are, and you don't want them to be disappointed when they meet the real you. So it's a hell of a lot easier to just be yourself right from the first date. And for years, ever since I was a kid, I was told that what women are attracted to is confidence. And I think there is truth to that. I think not just women, men and women, we're all attracted to people who are confident. But for the longest time, I think I had a false sense of what true confidence is. I thought for a man that confidence was maybe putting on some false bravado or machoism. And it was only recently and in filming this documentary that I realized that true confidence is simply being yourself, whatever that looks like. Being vulnerable. If you're in a shitty mood, be that. If you're in a great mood, be that. If you're feeling crazy, then be crazy. Just be yourself moment to moment.
I think that's some really good advice, and I think that's perfect. That's awesome. So kind of continuing on discussing, these really cool and interesting women that you met throughout this film. How did you, I mean, I think in the film we kind of see, you're looking up kind of cool stories and you're reaching out to them. It seems so simple, you found a woman, you reached out, they filmed. Was it really that simple, or
No.
how many people said no?
Oh, most people. Well, actually, most people don't even say no. Most people just don't respond at all. Most of my, messages sent to people were just met by silence, which is understandable. I'm asking people to participate in a documentary, and it was, I suppose, being a little bit vague, not to be deceiving, but because I didn't even really have a full sense of what I was doing. And it wasn't until the editing of it that I sort of finally found it. But no, I reached out to hundreds of people asking them to be in the doc, and most people don't respond. But luckily, some did. Actually, at a certain point into the process, a few months in, I got the help of a couple of researchers, because it was so time consuming trying to find people to be in the movie that I got help. So I would come up with lists of ideas that I would give to the researchers. Maybe we could find a female pilot or a female firefighter or a psychic or this. I had long lists of ideas, and they would go out and try to find these people.
Oh, no, so did it start, was it only you on the film, and then gradually, because it seems in some scenes it feels like somebody else is recording you. And then you say you have researchers. How big was the team kind of in the end?
Oh, I mean, it went from just me to me and a couple other people. It was always tiny. Like you said, yes, there were some scenes where I absolutely needed to bring a friend along to help film B-roll stuff. But most of the stuff, I would say, 85-90% of the material I filmed myself. And I did that, number one, well, for practical reasons. It's a low budget, no budget film.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have the money to pay a crew, and nor did I want to have to rely on a crew's schedule. I wanted to just be able to grab my gear and go out and film whenever I could. But more than that, I knew that I wanted the footage to be very intimate. I wanted to capture sort of the awkwardness of two people meeting for the first time. And I couldn't do that if there was a crew in the room. So even if I could afford a crew, I still wouldn't want them. As challenging as it was for me to be in the film and be filming and recording myself at the same time, that was really the only way that I could film this in the way I wanted to, because I wanted that quiet intimacy.
Yeah, and that definitely really shines through. So I think, and it really worked in your favor. I guess I'm curious, how many of the women in the film have seen the film?
I would
event.
like to know that too. I'm not, I'm not sure. Um, Erin has seen it.
Okay,
He loves it.
good, good. I'm
Um,
glad Aaron likes it.
that's right. I reached out to everyone in the film as it had its world premiere in January, this past January, at the Slamdance Film Festival in Park City, Utah. And that was the first chance I had to reach out to everyone in the film and let them know it was having its premiere. And then as it started to, win awards and get more exposure, I was keeping people in. And I think at least half of the people in the film are follow me on social media so they could see there too. But the truth is, I haven't really heard from anyone other than a few. So I don't know who has seen it. I mean, my fingers crossed. I hope that they all love it. That's important to me. Is I want everybody to be happy with their scenes and happy with the whole film. And I know that everybody had a good time filming. I mean, I say I know. I think they did.
I think it shines through that they were. Yeah, I think they were. I think it shines. I think they probably had a good time too. I would agree with that.
It was always a laugh,
Mhm.
even if neither of us understood exactly what we were doing. Uh, it was good conversation,
Mhm.
interesting conversation. I mean, what a great way, I think, to get to know somebody
Mm.
in a deeper way than you would normally. I mean, nothing is worse than small talk. Nobody likes small talk.
No, nobody,
No.
nobody.
So to film I don't really consider them interviews, more like filmed conversations, but to roll a camera and right away get into, deeper conversations about life and death and love and loss and all that stuff, that's much more interesting conversation and a quick way to get to know someone in a real way. So I think I think everybody did have a good time filming.
Good. Have you noticed, particular, talking with people about the film, is there any of the people, any of the women that people seem to gravitate towards and really have a lot to say about, after when they're talking to you about the film?
Well, quite a few people have mentioned Heidi Lee, the hat maker, whose hat
Yes,
I am
that.
wearing right now. Um, and she is brilliant.
Mm.
I mean, a true artist and a true original, which I love. I just love people who are so themselves, whatever that is. And and that's Heidi Lee. She is just so herself, um, and her hats. I mean, they're works of art. I mean,
Mm.
this is a tame one you saw in the movie. Her hats are wild.
I love the one when you're walking down the street and you're both painted and you have these crazy hats on. I thought that was just such a great scene in the
Yeah,
film. So
I think she calls that her broken umbrella hat.
okay.
But no, they're more works of art than fashion. I think
Mm.
they're incredible. So loved meeting Heidi Lee, and she was such a reminder to me of um, who I should be looking for in a partner. Someone who is, I guess, like me, just sort of maybe a little bit crazy in a good way. Yeah,
Hmm. I loved Heidi Lee a lot. I think she was great. And of course, you can't not love Erin in the film.
yes.
What has been, I know you mentioned her earlier that she likes the film, but what has kind of, was she seeing it as you were editing it? Like, what was kind of her reception and her response to the film?
She was seeing it as I was piecing it together. In fact, often Erin would be the first audience if I would, I'd finish a scene and I would show Erin. Um, and, along the way, one of Erin's comments was, why are, why is anyone else going to be interested in my story?
Mhm.
She said, like, when people watch documentaries on Netflix or wherever else, they want stories about important world events, historical event, or famous people, or people who are murderers, or, big, wild stories. Why am I going to be of any interest? And you know what? I thought she had a good point that I wasn't sure I had an answer to that. In fact, I think that was maybe one of the reasons I left the film for so many years. I thought, God, she's right. Like, this is such a personal story, such a small story about my search for love. Why is this going to be of any interest to anyone else? But luckily, people have connected with the film. Even though it is my personal story, I think at the same time it's a universal story. I think everybody knows what heartbreak is. Nobody gets through life without taking a few punches to the heart, and it can be devastating. And so I wanted to share with people my heartbreak, and hope that people would be able to relate to that, and find some joy or meaning in watching me search for love. But yes, Aaron, going back to your question, Aaron was sort of my first audience as we went along, and yeah.
I think your response kind of talking about, why are people wanting to see this film kind of rolls into my next question. And a lot of our Q&As this particular week, I feel the question of optimism in film kind of keeps being a reoccurring theme. And I think that is probably part of the reason why so many people, are resonating with your film, is because there is this, kind of hope of this tone of optimism in it, where you start in a bad place, but you're optimistic that through this something good will come out of it. So I'm kind of curious, how do you think optimism works in your film?
It's interesting. I don't know that I was feeling optimistic as I was filming it. To be honest, I didn't. I mentioned this earlier, but I didn't think I was going to find anybody, and I would have been happy if I had, if I just learned from all of these women. I didn't necessarily think that I was actually going to meet someone, and so I don't know. I don't know that it is necessarily, and if I had an optimistic attitude, even though the film did work out so nicely. I think it wasn't that I was optimistic. I think that it was at a certain point along the way, I accepted that I could be okay single.
Oh, I think that's a really, really valid point, and really good, I think that's something that a lot of people don't accept in their life.
Yeah.
I think that's really valid.
Yeah. I mean, ever since I was quite young, I've always wanted marriage. I mean, you meet my parents early on in the film, and they are now, I believe, 54 years into their marriage, and it's a joyful marriage. They're so great together. So they were a great example to me. And so I've always wanted marriage, and perhaps too much so. I was maybe so intense in my desire to be married that I made some wrong choices along the way, and was maybe with some of the wrong people along the way. And I think probably the best thing I did that year of filming was to, at a certain point along the way, let go of that and just be more, I don't know, present, and just enjoy my life, whether or not I was, with someone else.
I guess my next question is, you don't hide anything in the film. You're taking the camera on all these dates, you're taking it to a sex club, you're taking it to the doctor's office. Was it hard to be so unflinchingly honest in the film?
Well, in a sense, I felt like if I'm going to put myself at the center of a documentary, that being completely honest was the only way it would work. Because otherwise, I didn't want it to be some self-serving promotion piece. Um, so I knew if I'm going to turn the camera on myself, I would have to be completely, I was ready to sort of, I don't know, look like an idiot and and be embarrassed or be just yeah, just show everything, the good and the bad, especially because I'm interviewing all these people and I want to show them in an authentic way, so I have to do the same with myself. I can't ask other people to be open and honest if I'm not also doing the same.
I think that's a good point. I think that's definitely something I think any kind of a documentary I think is important to have the authenticity. And I think you really do feel it with this film really well. Um, and kind of another question I'm just curious about. I think I love the moment where, you see Erin's getting getting that tattoo covered over, and you see that Danielle, one of the other women that you talked to, is the one doing the tattoo. Have you kept in contact with any of the other women? Have there been similar moments like that where you've kind of crossed paths with them after the filming was done?
Well, I've been in touch just a little bit with Danielle, the tattoo artist. She's awesome too, by the way. And listen, I would be friends with any of the women in the film. I liked all of them, but no, I haven't really been in touch with any of them that much. Just a little bit here and there on social media, the odd phone call. But you get busy with life and other projects, and so no, I haven't really been in that close contact with anyone.
Okay. I guess we got about 10 minutes left, so I feel like we've touched upon this a little bit, but I just want to kind of dig more into what the editing process was like with putting this film together. So you had all the footage.
Yes.
You started working on it right after, and then you took a break. And then what was it like coming back to the footage, and what was kind of your process going through and editing the film together?
I am a perfectionist, and which has been in my life a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing in that I won't call a project finished until I think it's as perfect as I can make it. But it is a curse in that I will try every combination of clips imaginable. Like even if something is working, I think, well, maybe it could be better a different way. I try so many things before I settle on the finished film. You've got hundreds of hours of footage that I shot over the year to compress that into a 90-minute film and create an emotional arc, hit all of the emotional beats and it's just a lot of trial and error. I don't know that there is a method. It's just, of course you end up leaving out much more than you put in. Mm-hmm. And there were many, many scenes, edited scenes, that maybe the scenes worked really well, but they just didn't have they didn't move the story forward. Or perhaps there were certain scenes that were both strong, but they were both sort of hitting the same emotional beat, and I didn't need them both. So, you have to be ruthless. You have to leave a lot of stuff out and be okay with that. And it's just, you have to be self-critical. You have to have friends you can rely on, who will be honest with you and say, you don't need this, you don't need that, change the sequencing here, you have to rely on others, and you have to be just brutally honest with yourself. And if something's not working, you just got to keep trying different things till it does work.
I think in film school, I think they always tell you, like, oh, don't never have the director and the editor be the same person.
Right.
And I think with this film, you need it. It needed to be all come from you. So I think that was really interesting. And I think that, you did a really good job of bringing it together and kind of selecting the right scenes, I would say. At least in I mean, I obviously don't see what didn't make it into the film, but I think what did make it into the film worked really well.
Thank you. Yeah, and there were many other versions, dozens of other versions that were longer and shorter and had different. Yeah, it's just a lot of trial and error.
Mhm.
And I think you're right in this case because it's such a personal film. It did need to come from me, the edit, and that's the only way I know how to work. All of my projects, I sort of do it all. I guess I'm a bit of a control freak. And that's how I
That's
like to work.
I feel like a lot of the best filmmakers are. So you gotta know what you want in order to make a good film.
Yes.
Um, I guess again, another thing is, the elephant in the room. How has COVID kind of affected the journey of this film at all?
Well, I am lucky because, like I said, I got to premiere my film at Slamdance, which was the last, along with Sundance, major, sort of big international film festival that was able to happen in person.
Mhm.
Because after that, as you know, all of the festivals, including yours, went virtual, or some were canceled or had to find other arrangements. So I was very fortunate that I got to at least attend one festival where I could see the film played in a theater and experience the audience, the response. That was great. If not for COVID, I probably would have spent a lot of the year touring other festivals and being there in person. And I just decided instead, the film is playing, of course, and virtually in a bunch of other festivals, but decided to get it released digitally earlier than I would normally have. Probably would have waited to the end of the year if not for COVID and just done festivals. But yeah, just a week or two ago, it's out there now digitally. So if people want to share the film with their friends, it's on iTunes and Apple TV and Amazon Prime and all of the major VOD services.
Awesome. And how can people, if they want to kind of continue to follow along with your career and other films that you're going to do in the future, what should they do?
I'm on social media. I'm on Twitter and Facebook, and they can find me there at Steve Markle, and that's the best way. I'll post about projects as I've got them.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's about to wrap. We're probably wrapping up now. Is there any final statements, any final things you want the Woods Hole audience to know?
Thank you for watching the film. I'm so delighted. Working all of that time, a year filming, a year editing, working in a bubble, it's hard to imagine that one day people are actually going to see the damn thing. When the film is just when it lived on my laptop, it didn't feel like a real movie. So it's so thrilling and gratifying for me to know that the film is now being enjoyed. And because that's, what's the point of making art if people don't see it? And so I'm just thrilled, and thank you for including me in the festival, and thank you to everybody who watched the film. It means a lot that you would take the time to watch my quirky little romantic comedy.
Of course. Well, thank you for making the film, of course. So that's it for our Q&A with Steve and Shoot to Marry. The film is still available to watch from now through August 1st. On midnight on August 1st is when all our films will no longer be available. So you have a couple more days to watch them. Until the next time, this has been Hannah and Steve Markle from Shoot to Marry. And have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Anna.
Bye.